You're listening to Word Slinger Podcast, episode 150, Thrillers as Satire with Rick Pullen. This episode of the Word Slinger Podcast is brought to you by Draft to Digital. Convert your manuscript, distribute it online, and get support the whole way at drafttodigital.com.
It's the Word Slinger Podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger.
Word Slinger.
That's right. You made it to the right place. No worries. This is the Word Slinger Podcast. I am Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to have another fun week. I've got on the show today an author who there's a long history. I mean, okay, let me just back up. I met this author because of other authors I've interviewed, specifically Steve Barry, who put me in touch with his publicist, who put me in touch with Rick Pullen. Rick has written a book called The Apprentice, and if the title sounds vaguely familiar, there's a good reason for that. This is an interesting concept, but it's a thriller that is essentially a satire on current events and our current president, Donald Trump. Regardless of how you feel about the guy, I'll be honest, I don't like him much. I didn't like him much when he was hosting The Apprentice. I didn't like him much when he was just doing a cameo in Home Alone 2. I'm not a fan, but I'm also not calling for the guy's head or anything, and maybe I should be. Or maybe not. Whatever your political leanings. I'm conservative. You may be liberal. I don't mind. But this is kind of a fun idea of taking current events and writing a thriller around the whole thing. So that's what Rick's done. He's got other books out there that you might find interesting, by the way, like Naked Ambition. And I think he kind of takes this tack with his work. So this is an interesting concept. I was pretty glad to chat with him about it. So we'll hop into that interview in a second. Now I've got, of course, some industry news events. I'm tapering things down a little. I think I went a little long last time, but I am tapering things down just a little with the news items this morning. I got three more stories that I think you're going to dig. So stick around after the interview for those. And I'm curious, are you, what are you getting out of the show these days? Are you enjoying the show? Are you getting useful tidbits? I'm consider this a survey. If you'll pop over to wordslingerpodcast.com and send me an email and let me know, what are you getting out of the show these days? Is there anything that really sticks out as something, fun, something, because let me just put it this way. The mission of the show is to inspire and inform, educate and entertain. And if I'm hitting all four of those points in every episode, then I'm really being a success. If I can only do one, I still consider it a success. But let me know, how am I doing with that? I don't get a ton of feedback on that, the sort of format of the show. I do get a lot of people who write, had someone write and tell me that they enjoyed my take on education, which I thank you. I know it's not always a popular position that I have, but whatever. We can all coexist anyway, even if we differ on certain points of view. But I would like to hear how this content is impacting your life in positive ways, if it is. So thanks for that in advance. Now, we're going to go ahead and hop right into this interview with Rick Pullen. Great guy. I really enjoyed him. Enjoyed chatting with him. He was wearing an eye patch during the interview. Because he had I think he had eye surgery or something, and so if you want to see that, you can hop over to the YouTube version of the show. That's always kind of interesting to be able to put a face to the name, But he assures me he does not normally wear an eye patch, so it was kind of a nice pirate theme for the day. I think it gives him an edge. So Rick, if you're listening, I think the eye patch gave you kind of an edge, man. You might consider making that a regular part of the of the whole ensemble. So, anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy this interview with Rick Pullen, and stick around for the industry news afterwards. I'll see you on the other side. Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another fine week of the Word Slinger podcast. Now, today I'm talking with, I love talking to authors in particular, but specifically, I love talking to thriller authors. I'm talking to Rick Pullen. He's the author of The Apprentice. He's got other books available. We're going to talk about some of his stuff that's upcoming. And this guy is writing, well, according to your topic, Rick, it's a DC thriller, so that means it's set, I'm going to presume it's set in Washington, D.C. Is that correct? And welcome to the show, by the way.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's set in Washington, D.C., and the title should give away a little bit of what it's all about.
Yes, it is. I want to get into that because it's kind of funny. And I've been thumbing, you sent me a copy of the book, and I've had just enough time to start kind of thumbing through it, and I find it kind of amusing. So do you want to, let's get into the premise of the book, because it's I don't know how to refer to it. It's not a parody. It's an actual thriller, but you're kind of hinting at some real life people and events, we'll say.
Yeah, think of House of Cards. So it's about a journalist. I've spent my career as a journalist. So what I really know is journalism. So this is about a young apprentice, basically, reporter. She just started at this major Washington, D.C. newspaper, and events throw her into investigating the president of the United States, who happens to be, well, he's not actually president yet, he's president-elect, and he happens to be this billionaire developer with no political experience.
Right. That sounds oddly familiar.
Yeah, just a little.
And this, and I love the fact that you gave the president the initials of someone we would recognize. I don't know. I have this fear that if I say the guy's name in conjunction with the interview, I'm going to end up on some sort of watch list.
Well, I mean, there's a few reviews of the book is sort of, I call them my hate mail or something, so yeah. People, you always get that. Anything that even comes close to real life, people get upset about.
Right. Yeah, I get those folks. And so you're, do you need to deal with
I can't believe the thing goes off, but it does.
That's what happens, man. And this is a warts and all show. I tell people all the time. This is
that's live, so that's the problem you get sometimes.
Right. So now it's obvious what inspired this particular book. I'm curious though, like what brought you to the world of thriller writing? Anyway, you had a book prior to this. You want to talk about that one just a bit?
That was Naked Ambition. What happened with that is that I had this idea for a scene, and I had it for over a decade, and I couldn't resolve it. And basically what it is, it's like a federal prosecutor leaks a story to a reporter. Again, I write about reporters.
Right.
And the reporter publishes a story. The prosecutor's boss, who's in the Justice Department, gets really angry and decides they're going to go after the reporter to find out who leaked the story to him, not knowing that it was a federal prosecutor. And so the preliminary hearing or the hearing, whatever it is set up. And at the very last second, because of different circumstances, the prosecutor who leaked the story has to prosecute his own leak. But think about that. What do you do?
That's a sticky situation.
Does the reporter, say, okay, you did it? Or does the reporter protect his source? What happens? So I couldn't figure out how to resolve that scene. And I talked to friends about it for years and years. And then one day at lunch over a beer with a colleague, it came to me. And that was back in 2011. So I went home that night and started writing. And I had the first draft of the book done by January or February. This was August in 2011 I started. And then it took me 3 years to write because I had no idea what I was doing. I've been a journalist. I mean, inverted pyramid style, all that kind of stuff. And I didn't know how to write fiction, so I started reading books on how to write fiction. And I literally read 40 books on how to write fiction. So I know how to write a sex scene because there's a book on that. Dialogue, I'm pretty good at that. Setting, that's probably my weakness, but there's books on setting. scenes, you name it. I mean, there's just so many books out there on how to do this. And I figured it out. And and I also had help of a great editor, Lauren Oberweger, she's in Tampa, Florida, and she's my editor. And she was a huge help, and it just sort of taught me how to do this and pull it all together. And when I finished the book, it was a good book, and it got published, and it became a bestseller in 3 weeks. So I was pretty happy about it. Yeah.
Wow. 3 weeks. What's your secret?
I don't know. I mean, I have a publisher friend. I mean, not when I say bestseller, an Amazon bestseller, but it was number one in 3 different thriller genres. And it just, I have a buddy who's a niche publisher, and he said, Rick, you don't know what you've done. You're the one in a million who really made it.
Right.
And I thought, whoa, okay. I mean, it's selling like crazy. And, now, am I a New York Times bestseller? No, I'm nowhere near that. But Amazon wise, it sold really well, and it caught people's attention. It helped me get an agent. So, everything worked out nicely.
Hey, there's hope, man. Washington Post just announced that they're revamping their bestseller list, and they're going to start including Amazon results.
Good.
So, you never know.
Too late for me, right?
Nah, man, you got the next book. Yeah, you got the next one coming out. Yeah, I know. I felt the same way. I'm like, oh, where were you when I was hitting bestseller on Amazon and iBooks? And now I'm, who knows? Who knows? We'll see. We're going to both hit that New York Times list, man.
So my first book, Naked Ambition, is about an experienced investigative reporter.
Okay.
The Apprentice is about a novice investigative reporter, or just reporter. And so it's, and then my next book is going to be a sequel to Naked Ambition. It's called Naked Truth, and that'll be about the murder of a Supreme Court justice. And then I'm working on another series, so it would be a third series, which I'm talking to another publisher about, called Silent Partner. And that again would be another investigative reporter, and so it's like they're all different personalities, different people, all that kind of stuff. Right. But I'm thinking, well, how do I deal with this? Especially if the third series, gets picked up by another publisher. And so basically they all work for the same newspaper. So all the secondary characters will be the same, and that's just like, that makes it much easier. So
that's a clever idea.
Yeah, it just makes it. I mean, because I know then all the secondary characters, and it just makes that part easy. So then it's just working on the original character.
Right. Yeah. I was going to ask you if you were, because it's clear that was going to be a sequel. I didn't know if you were planning to expand it into an entire series, but. Of course, the question though is how naked can you get? I mean, how many naked titles?
I have a long list. So
really? Okay.
Yeah, well, so Naked Truth will be out. That's about the Supreme Court, and then Naked Eye will be coming out in another year or so. That'll be about the press.
Okay.
I mean, because so much is happening with the press and all the changes with the press, I thought, let's do a novel about that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. And, that's, of course, reporters are just like cops. There's a rich world you can dig into. And a lot of it sort of, when you coming from that world, you've got that inside information, right? How much is that influencing your book? Clearly a lot.
Yeah. Well, you hit on something there, because I don't know anything about cops. I don't know how they do stuff, how they investigate stuff. I mean, I'm a huge Michael Connelly fan. I mean, I've stopped reading his books because there's only 4 left that I haven't read yet, and I enjoy them so much. I don't want to read them all and then I'm all out.
Slow down, savor your books.
That's right. And so, but I really said, well, I don't know anything. I don't know how these guys investigate this, and basically I'd have to start from scratch. If I were to write a cop book, and I have friends who do that. So I thought, well, what do I know? I know journalism. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah.
So use what I know, and and expand on it, and so that's what I do. I mean, I know I used to be an investigative reporter, so I know how that works.
Yeah. And that's it's not unique. I mean, there are other authors out there who were reporters who come from that world. But I mean, it is kind of a leg up in that you can draw on past experience and past encounters and that sort of thing as part of your work. I mean, I'm sure that what's that?
I do.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I love that idea that your supporting characters repeat throughout the books. So that does seem like a way to, it's almost like, I don't know if you're much of a comic book reader, but it's almost like that kind of universe where you got all these super heroic characters, and then they may encounter some minor B character from some other book. So that's kind of cool.
So you know who they are.
Yeah, exactly.
So my readers, they'll know those secondary characters.
Yeah, and I think that would make the world that much richer.
It helps me because it lets my secondary characters grow some, because so they're not just so flat. It gives them an opportunity to be three-dimensional as well.
Now, what happens when those characters take on a life of their own and they want their own book?
Well, it could happen. I mean, I've thought about that with a couple of them. I wonder, but we'll see.
Well, how great is that, though? Like how great is that? Because now you've got these developed characters with history that the readers already love. So if someone resonates with a particular character, it's almost like genius marketing, Rick. It's you can discover ahead of time which characters you should write about.
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea, and it just basically for me, it's finding the time to write all this stuff.
Yeah. Now, you still working as a reporter?
And I'm a magazine editor. So okay. I mean, I haven't written any nonfiction in years. Yeah. I haven't. In fact, I'm retiring this year, so I'm hoping to maybe in the fall actually write a few stories or something. As I transition out and they hire somebody to replace me.
Right.
So it'll be a several month transition.
Yeah.
So then next year I actually get to write full time, and that's when I'll start getting, these novels all done. And,
that's usually right around the time things get scary. Because suddenly you're like, okay, this is it. I don't have the fallback anymore.
Yep.
Yeah. So
but I'm ready. I'm ready for it. I've wanted to do this for years, so we just decided to take the plunge.
Now, have you found that there's any difference between? I mean, there are differences, but I mean, any key notable differences between writing, in the journalism world and writing fiction? Anything that really just stands out and makes it?
Oh yeah.
Awkward?
I mean, it's how you. Well, first of all, the dialogue is a whole lot better.
Right.
You can go back and rewrite, and I'm a huge fan, of Lawrence Block and Dashiell Hammett, who I think write the wittiest dialogue,
Right.
And so I go back and I really work hard on that, So people think, oh, that's brilliant, Well, yeah, it's been rewritten 10 times, but people, readers don't realize that. So yeah, the dialogue's better. Just the crafting of the story is totally different. The way you sort of do a chronological, in fiction, whereas you don't do that in journalism. Journalism's the old-fashioned pyramid style for the most part.
Right.
Unless you you do write some narratives for magazines, but you're basically telling the most important thing first, and you get, a little less important until you get to the very end.
Yeah.
And so it's a totally different style. And like I said, I read 40 books on how to write fiction because I didn't know how to do it.
Right.
And so I had to learn, and, because that's the one thing. It took me 3 years to write my first book, and took me 3 months to write The Apprentice. It took me 9 months to write Naked Truth, and I'm still doing the final edits on that. So it depends on, The Apprentice is meant as a serial, and whereas the others are meant as a series. So the Naked series, I call it. And then, The Apprentice, when I write the second book, it'll just be The Apprentice Part 2 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
The story in The Apprentice will pick up right at the end, where the first book leaves off, the second book will pick right up right there. Whereas in a series, you're just talking about the same characters.
Right. Yeah. So what about the sort of work ethic of the whole thing? Do you come back to it each day, or you have like a daily word count, or how do you handle it?
I don't do a word count. I do time pretty much. I mean, since I'm
Okay.
still working right now, I get up at 5 and I basically write till 7, and then I got to go jump in the shower and head off to work. So, and I'm a lot fresher in the morning. My brain works better in the morning, so that's when I write.
Yeah.
I mean, every once in a while I'll do a little bit at night, but the reality is my brain's not there. So
Yeah, I'm the same way.
And I get into it, man, and I mean, sometimes I'm writing so fast I can't, it's garbage, the first time you write, but it's
Right.
You have to get all the ideas on paper. Or at least
See, that's the key, right? Because I tell authors that all the time. I talk to a lot of what I call will-be authors, and
no discipline.
no one likes to hear that. No one likes to hear that you have to turn off the internet editor and just put crap on the page.
Yep.
And then come back and edit later.
Well, so what I do, which is kind of interesting, I think, I haven't heard of other people doing it, but I'm writing along, and when you're writing, that's when you're concentrating. That's when you're totally focused on what you're talking about. And so I'll be writing. I don't know if I'm in the middle of dialogue or something, and an idea comes to my head, and I just write it out right there. Mm-hmm. So I could be right in the middle of a plot doing something, and suddenly it says, make sure, this character does this and that character does that, and switch it from the character, whatever. And then I keep on writing, because if I don't, I'll forget it. I just know I'll forget it. And, and as you know, the first draft is just garbage.
Right.
Trying to get, one foot in front of the other and get the whole plot out there. Unless you're Lee Child. I think Lee Child writes it all in one sitting almost, and I admire the hell out of him.
He just spits it all out between sips of scotch.
Yeah. and pokes of marijuana.
So it's interesting. We come from similar backgrounds, you and I. I was not really a journalist so much. I did write for newspapers and magazines for quite some time, but most of my career was copywriting, and it's the same general idea. And now I do appreciate, though, because I think, and you probably are the same way, because even the bad stuff is actually pretty okay. So it's not going to be that painful to come back to, hopefully.
What I enjoy most, what I hate the most is plotting, because I love twists and turns, and my daughter is a big help. So she helps me with crazy ideas for plots, and getting it all in order and all that. That to me is really hard. Yeah. But then so that's like my first draft is really a glorified plot. And then the second draft is where I really start to edit and rewrite. That's when I really call it writing.
Right.
That is so much fun. I love crafting sentences. I love going back and fixing sentences. I love, and then the third draft is when I really, really try to polish it.
Yeah.
And really make it sing.
Yeah.
So that's the part I love.
Yeah. Because that's
hard.
That's when you've pulled all the strings and, the picture starts to show up. So now you're coming at this and you're spending your time on it. You said something earlier. You said you don't like plotting. Do you outline, or, because I'm a discovery writer?
I don't outline. I should. I get an idea and I'll jot it down. Like I said, I'll be in the middle of writing. What I try to do is the old Mickey Spillane school, write a great first chapter and a great, to get people to read the book, a great last chapter to get them to read the next book.
Right.
And so I know how it's going to end. It's getting the whole middle part of the book to get there. And that's what I use my daughter for. My daughter Jill helps me, all these plot twists, because I love plot twists. I love surprising my reader. So my books are just full of plot twists, and you think it's going in one direction and it goes in another. And I will say, a lot of the reviews in my book have said that their people are actually really surprised. What happened in the book, and I thought it was going here and it went there, and that's the joy I get out of it, is tricking people into they're thinking the book is going one way and it goes another.
Right. Yeah, that's what you want, though, right? You want people to write you and say, I had no idea where it was going, and I had to keep reading to find out. So you don't outline.
No.
Yeah. And what's interesting is I've talked to, at this point, thousands of authors, you get a different answer. Well, there's usually one of two general answers. They're either a plotter or a pantser,
Yep.
right? But when you talk to the pantsers, or when you talk to the plotters, they cannot conceive of being able to do what you do. They cannot conceive of, especially writing a thriller with a lot of twists and turns, without having that outline. So
Well,
how do you keep
I
track
have
of
to
it?
go back, and I add stuff. So, like I said, I know where the beginning is. I know where
Mhm.
the end is, and when I'm getting there, I get a new idea. And how about I put this twist in and that twist in, and then
Right.
I'll like end. So the first draft is done, and then I go, wait a minute, I could do this, or I can do that, or I can change the ending, or I can add something to the ending, or whatever. And so it's a constant building of the plot. So so I do know where I'm going. And
Right.
that's key is knowing where you're going, how you're going to end it. And I just don't know all the twists and turns in the middle. And of course, I work on that a lot because most books in the middle kind of die, and
Yeah.
I don't want mine to die in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of the worst thing that could happen to your book, really, is
Yeah.
that it's strong beginning and strong ending. But if it fizzles out halfway through, no one ever sees the strong ending.
Yep.
Now you mentioned reviews earlier, and that's of course, the life's blood of authors. Frankly, how do you get those reviews? Do you put anything in the books, or how are you getting them?
They just pop up. I mean, I'm talking about Amazon reviews, and
Yeah,
then I have a publicist and marketing people who send the book out to lots of people, and they'll review it.
right.
But it really is. It's just I don't know. People just go online and review it.
Yeah,
It just happens. It just kind of builds. It just. I mean, like I said, I don't know how my book became my first book became a bestseller. I don't know how it happened. It just happened.
did you have a following at all? You got like a
No,
platform?
nobody knew who I was, and
Wow.
it just took off. Which is what my friend, the publisher, was telling me. He says, "Rick, you just don't get it. This doesn't happen to people."
Yeah.
So I
You
was.
got a whole lot of people right this second who want to stab you, actually.
I mean,
Because
I
that
got
doesn't
lucky.
happen. Yeah.
I just got really lucky.
Yeah. Well, there's probably you don't just get lucky in this business, though. There has to be, a good book behind it all.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with that. I mean, and I wrote it and I rewrote it, and when I thought, is this ready to go? And I decided, no, I want one more edit. And so
mhm.
I hired my editor again, Lauren, to edit it one more time, and it just made it such a better book.
Yeah.
And then after that, I did, a whole nother edit again and again. And it just, you have to do that. I mean, basically what I've been taught is that if it's not the best work you can do, don't publish it. Go
Yeah.
back and work on it some more. And that's what I did for my first book.
How
So,
many edits do you generally have?
well, I've only written 3 books, so I don't know. I mean, it's
You haven't got the average yet.
3 or 4, 3 or 4.
Right. Right. Yeah, man, there are people who do that. They go crazy with that stuff. And I forget who it was. And it may have been Steve Barry, who says that he does like 50 rounds of revision on
Yeah.
a book.
I wouldn't surprise it. I mean, knowing Steve, I mean, Steve went through what it took him 88 agents before he got an agent.
Yeah.
I mean, and Steve is the one who taught me persistence.
Yeah.
And so and there's a guy named Jack Bales who's a research librarian taught me, you have to like get up every morning and work it every day. And, and of course I'm a member of International Thriller Writers, and they
Right.
preach, about butt in the seat and
Yes.
work it. This is not a romantic sort of a profession. It's really hard work, and it's a business.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. And a lot of people do not, they either don't think of it like that, or they don't want to think of it like that.
Right.
That whole, just the butt in seat idea and coming back every day is so painful for so many authors.
Yep.
How do you do it? Like what brings you back?
Because I love the plot twist. And and I'm always trying to think of another plot twist. And like I said, plot is my hardest thing to come up with, but I have good plots. And then I love the rewrite. I love the polishing. I I get a lot of satisfaction out of turning a great phrase.
Yeah.
And it's really, that's what it is. And sometimes at night I'm thinking of the plot. I go, oh, that's what I need to do. And I'll get up, in the middle of the night and go and type up something, so I don't forget it, And the next morning I'm really eager to get there and work on it and make it happen. So I love that part of it. You don't do it to make $1 million. You do it because you love it, because the odds are you never make $1 million.
Yeah. Although one can dream, one can hope.
Oh yeah.
So that whole getting up in the middle of the night thing, my wife this morning, she's aspiring to be a writer at this point. I think it's hard to be around me for too long and not want to try your hand at this. She's had an idea for a book for the past, we've been married, let's see, about 12 years now. So she's had an idea for about 8 of those years. And she's always trying to get me to write it. Like, this is your story, your book. You should write this book. She got up in the middle of the night last night because she had an idea for an opening and wrote it. Now she's stoked. So
there you go. See,
I'm pushing her.
That's what it takes.
That's what it takes.
Like me, I started out, with that one scene. And as soon as I finally got the scene in my head, how I would resolve it, I sat down and wrote for 4 or 5 months straight. Yeah. But it was getting started. It was getting that, impetus. And when I finally figured it out, I was on a roll.
Yeah. So what I like, okay. So I tell people a lot that, basically it's kind of like carving a statue out of a hunk of marble, right? You actually have to have the marble before you can form it into David. And that's what you're basically talking about is you're going on, you're crafting the marble in its raw form. And then your favorite part is coming back and smoothing all the edges and letting the statue emerge, right?
Yes, that I love. It just gives me so much pleasure.
Yeah. That's that's what draws us back to it. So, all right.
And it's really about, that you have to want to do it and you have to be persistent at it. Most people, who say, I want to write a book, don't, because they quit after 2 weeks. They don't have the discipline to sit down and do it every day and look at that, computer screen and there's nothing on it. And then they just decide, I'll go, get on Google or something, or go watch the news or read the newspaper, and they just sort of quit. And because you'll never get published if you don't have the discipline to actually write the book. Right.
Exactly right. Yeah. So you have an agent, you said.
Yes.
How did you end up connecting with your agent?
Well, that's a funny story. Well,
good.
I had 38 agents turn me down, okay?
Yeah.
Or ignore me. Probably most of them, I think, just ignored me. And I don't know how to write a query letter. That's probably part of it too. And what happened is there's this wonderful woman out in Seattle named Mary Buckham. And I told you earlier, setting is sort of my weakness. And she writes these wonderful books about what she calls active setting. Okay. And she's written 3 or 4 of them. I've got them all. I've read them all. I just love Mary. So I emailed her. We sort of became email pals. I said, if you're ever on the East Coast, because I live in Virginia, I said, I want to meet you. So she wrote me back about 6 months later, said, I'm going to be just outside Richmond, Virginia, with the Virginia Romance Writers in November of 2015. So I said, I'm going to come down there. So I contacted the romance writers. They said, sure, come on down, day-long seminar, Mary's giving. So I get there, and I have one of 2 guys in a room of about 80 women.
Yep.
And, and Mary's giving this seminar and stuff, and they introduced me as, a guy writing a thriller. So, at the end of the program today, Mary's got books, and people are in line to buy her books. And so I'm in line, and this woman taps me on the shoulder and says, hey, I'd love to read your manuscript. I said, sure. And she says, well, I'm a reader for an agent in New York. I said, sure. So this is a Saturday night. And so I emailed it to her on Monday morning. Monday afternoon, she wrote me back, I love this. This is one of the best things I've read in years. And she says, I'm not quite finished yet, but I'm going to get a hold of my agent. And I'm thinking to myself, now, wait a minute. I've had 38 people just say no. And so anyway, the next day she sent it off to him and says, he'll be back in touch. And then I didn't hear anything, and didn't hear anything, didn't hear anything. So I thought, well, okay, this is sort of the norm. So in January, he finally emails me, I really like your book. It's well written. I just don't think it's a breakout novel, so I'm not going to represent you. So then I go, oh man. So my publisher friend who I mentioned earlier said, Rick, why don't you try this Kindle Scout thing? And Kindle Scout is a program that Kindle Press puts on. Kindle Press is one of a dozen or more imprints that Amazon has. Right. And basically they put your book up on the internet, maybe the first 4 chapters or 3 chapters. They end it at a certain spot, and people nominate it to be published. And they do it for 30 days, and then they decide if they want to publish you or not. So, naturally you're thinking, oh, this is sort of crowdsourcing, that whoever gets the most votes gets published, but it's not. They actually read your book, and what all the people who nominate your book, if you get published, they get a free ebook. What it's really all about is all those people who get the free ebook, they urge them to then review your book on Amazon. And so it's like free marketing for them. So they picked up my book, and it just took off. So now this is May of 2016. International Thriller Writers is in July. So I saw that the agent who really liked my book but didn't pick me up was going to be there. So I wrote him, and I told him what had happened. And so we ended up having brunch in New York at the conference, and he picked me up as a client.
Wow.
So,
wow.
You have to sell a lot of books. It gets your agent's attention.
Remember earlier when I said there were a whole lot of people who wanted to stab you right now? Mm-hmm. It just tripled, because there are so many authors who have struggled to do exactly what you just did, who have had no success at this at all. That's amazing, man.
Try Kindle Scout. I'm serious.
Kindle Scout. Yeah, and it's a program that my listeners are going to be very familiar with. And I actually know a handful of authors very well who got their launch there. So that's an incredible program. So that's fantastic, man. That's that's the Pretty Woman fairy tale story. Yep. Of magic, basically. You're a freaking unicorn, is what you are. Yep. Well, that's fantastic, man. Well, look, we are. I've kept you on. I told you I'd try to keep this at around 45 minutes. We're around that. So, what I'm going to do is, if you'll hang out, don't hang up when I switch this over. But I gotta talk to you. I want to talk to you for like 5 more minutes for what I call my Word Slinger after show. So you'll hang out for that?
Sure.
Okay. Tell everybody where they can find more about you online.
My website is rickpullen.com.
Okay.
That's rickpullen.com. Okay. They can buy my book on Amazon or order it from any bookstore. So, all right. There's the 2 books I have right now are Naked Ambition and The Apprentice.
And of course, for those listening and those watching, I'm going to include links to all this stuff in the show notes of this episode. So make sure you go down there and click through. Rick, thank you so much. Hang out.
Thank you.
Everybody else within the sound of my voice and possibly looking at your screens on YouTube, right this second, you're probably hearing the groovy bridge music. You may dance in place at will. Stick around for some industry news and some other tidbits and information you're going to want to know. And I'll see you on the other side. Thank you so much, Rick, for being on the show. And everyone else, we'll see you next week. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Rick Pullen. The idea of a thriller as satire is kind of cool to me. That's the thing about art. In writing as an art, we use art to as a lens to look into the world around us, to investigate the world around us and determine whether or not things are. Basically, to figure out how the world works and what our place is in it. Let's just put it that way. Instead of me fumbling and stumbling around for half an hour. This idea of looking at the world through that lens, the lens of a thriller, I find it fascinating and interesting. I'm sure our president would actually be offended by the very notion, maybe call it fake novel writing or something. Well, whatever. He doesn't get a vote. How about that? So now that we're on the other side of the interview, I want to go ahead and jump right into the industry news because there's some cool stuff. There's some interesting things happening. We're in a really interesting time. We're in a very interesting time in the indie industry, the indie publishing industry. We've got so many things happening all at once. It's kind of like that there's been some sort of mantle shift in the world of indie publishing, and that we're just sort of seeing tremors and then the occasional volcano or something. Now here's so first up. I want to mention first up that this week's indie publishing news is brought to you by Draft to Digital. Go figure, but. Draft to Digital is where you can actually convert and publish and distribute your books online worldwide with support the whole way. And if you go to drafttodigital.com/wordslinger, you'll help them out, you'll help you out, you'll help me out. And you don't lose any money out of your pocket by this, by the way. I get a cut of Draft to Digital's cut of your royalty. They take 15% of your royalty when it's all said and done. And that's only if you sell books. So they only make money if you make money. And I only make money if you make money. So go check out drafttodigital.com/wordslinger, and we can all make money together. All right, now let's jump right into the news. First up, the worlds are ending. The worlds are ending. Amazon has announced that it will be closing its popular Kindle World service in July. KW launched in May 2013 as a way for intellectual property owners to open their worlds to other writers, with both the copyright holder and the contributor splitting royalties from sales. It was a popular option for authors looking to break into writing fiction with the power of a known brand behind them, and there's been no official word so far as to what happens next. And that's proving problematic for contributing authors, honestly. Under the Kindle World's license agreement, the contributing author has granted rights to their stories to the property holders, which effectively means that it's up to those property holders to make any deals to republish or redistribute that work. And there are very few viable options for royalty splitting in the marketplace right now. So the likelihood is that these titles will never be republished. I think there's going to be an emerging resource for this, and I can't wait to see it. But I'd love to hear what you think about it. Now, you can find this story if you go to bit.ly/150-worlds. bit.ly/150-worlds. This is episode 150. The headline has the word world in the title. You get how this works, right? Go check that out. You can also find a link in the show notes. I want to hear what you have to think, what you have to say about this, what you think about this. The Kindle Worlds program, I know at least half a dozen authors. Nick Thacker was a Kindle Worlds author. He wrote a book in the A.G. Riddle universe, the Atlantis universe that he writes in. Nick's book is called The Atlantis Riddle. I'm curious. I haven't reached out to Nick yet, so I don't know what his position is yet, but I'm curious as to what happens to these titles. I think they're just going to be pulled, and the property owners can decide to republish them, but how does the royalty split work at that point? If you make things complicated for people, particularly people who don't have time to mess with complicated, then the default is to not do anything. So let me know what you think about that. Hop on over to wordslingerpodcast.com. Hit me up with an email or a comment on this show's show notes page, and I'd love to hear it. Next up, Romantic Times is calling it quits. Romantic Times magazine, it's been around forever, and its associated annual convention. They're both going to be shutting down, according to a May 16th announcement from the actual convention this year. The Romantic Times convention is currently running, but magazine owner Catherine Falk announced to attendees that this would be the last year for the convention and for the magazine. Most attendees were very surprised and were concerned that this closure would impact readers. Thanks to Joe Carroll Jones, however, there's still some spark for the readers and convention goers. Jones accounted that she will be creating and running the Book Lovers Convention, which will take up the cause. This is a curious turn of events. You know, the romance market is huge, so I don't know the circumstances behind closing down the magazine and the convention, but typically you don't close down unless you're not profitable. So even though the genre is huge and there are more authors making a living from it than ever, maybe there's just not enough love to go around, so to speak, for readers to connect with these authors at these conventions. It could be that there are just far too many romance authors out there, or there are other means for readers to connect with those authors. And the convention is no longer needed for that purpose. Too expensive, too much hassle, too difficult to get to. Maybe readers are less interested in meeting the authors in person. I don't know. There's a lot that could go into that. So I'm curious to hear what you think on that. Hop over to wordslingerpodcast.com. Send me an email. Let me know what you think of this development. You can find the story at bit.ly/150-romantic. That's where you can dig in. That's on their actual site, so you ought to be able to get some useful information out of that. If you happen to be a romance author and you have inside information on this, let me know. I'd love to hear more on the story. I could update people later. Speaking of updating, more cocky. The story behind #CockyGate just keeps evolving. Now with a feature article in Vox detailing some of the finer points of the IP battle. For those not in the know, author Felina Hopkins, she's a romance author, she started an avalanche of news and ill feelings when she trademarked the word cocky as it applies to ebooks, books, and audiobooks in the romance genre. She started a ruckus when she sent cease and desist letters to a number of romance authors using the word in the titles of their books, following up by issuing takedown notices with Amazon for alleged trademark violation. Now, the story continues to take on mass as authors take issue, file petitions to have the trademark revoked, and even turn to trade organizations like the RWA to bring legal muscle to the game. The implications of this story just keep unfolding. Now, if you recall, I actually covered this story last week in the episode with Michelle Meadow, and I think it's interesting that this is happening. It's what's doing is opening up a whole world that we haven't yet explored, a frontier we haven't yet explored in the indie publishing industry. What is the relationship between indie publishing and intellectual property? You know, how does this work? How does branding work? There are a lot of questions coming out of this. My personal take is that Hopkins overstepped with the trademark. I don't think she had a legal right to trademark the word in any form, honestly. It is a commonly used English word and commonly used in the romance genre. She has no first use case for the term because it was used well before her first book was published. And she tried to trademark the term in a stylized font. She didn't try. She actually succeeded in trademarking the term in a stylized font, and the font's creator never granted her the permission to do that. So this is my personal, non-legal, non-informed take. This trademark should never have happened. There's 2 trademarks involved in this case. Neither of them should have held up. Someone at the United States Patent and Trade Office did not do their job. It did not vet properly. And now we've got a sticky situation, which could ultimately evolve into a greater discussion about trademark, copyright, intellectual property in general. So it is something to watch. It's something to watch as content creators, as IP creators. IP meaning intellectual property, by the way. I use the term a lot, so I forget sometimes not everyone knows what I'm talking about. And the more technical among you may be thinking of Internet Protocol. But this has opened up a broader discussion about intellectual property in the indie publishing industry. And I'm kind of glad of it, actually. I mean, it's going to be a headache. It's going to be a nightmare. It could result in some things we don't like. But it also opens up the possibility of creating new protections for our properties, new ways for us to work within the worlds of other authors. For example, the whole Kindle Worlds thing is an IP twist up. So maybe something really positive can come out of this if we concentrate, if we focus. So that's it. That's the news for this week. I hope you get something out of these news segments. These are new, relatively new. I've only been doing this for the past few months. I try to bring you 3 new stories every week. Sometimes I bring you a story more than once, like Cockeygate. But I hope you're getting something out of that. Let me know. Hop over to wordslingerpodcast.com. Send me an email and let me know that you're getting something out of this and how you feel about it. It helps me to fine-tune the content of the show, and things are getting better. Stuff's getting better. Stuff's getting better all the time. Tell you what, if you can tell me what book and or movie that comes from, I will send you I will send you from the Wordslinger Podcast Studios an official repurposed Marvel No Prize from the 80s. Which of course is nothing, but I will give you positive energy and goodwill. But pop over to wordslingerpodcast.com. Let me know where that quote comes from. Stuff's getting better. Stuff's getting better all the time. And here's a hint. The person who originally penned those words has been a guest on the Wordslinger podcast. So go forth, my slingers, and find this trivia and share it with me. Okay, so that's going to wrap us up for this week. I appreciate you sticking around. I have to tell you, some weeks are harder than others. I had an interesting thing happen. I had the shelves that were mounted to the wall behind me collapsed. All my stuff went to the floor. I got hit. There's all kinds of chaos. That happened on Monday, and I've spent the whole week recovering from that. I had to do some patching and painting and that sort of thing. So had an interesting week. So if you're watching the video version of the podcast, you'll notice that the shelves disappear. They're going to go back up. I'm going to try to put them up today, actually. But, that's the way things work out. So that said, chaos happens in your life, okay? Some episodes of the Wordslinger podcast are tougher to produce than others. Last week's was really tough. This week's not as tough. Sometimes things fall off your walls. Sometimes you have fender benders. Sometimes you get into altercations on Facebook. Sometimes we have rough days. And they can lead to rough weeks, but they don't have to lead to rough lives. I'm coming to realize just how remarkable my life is. You would think I'd just know this instinctively. I don't. You probably don't either. But I encourage you to stop for 5 minutes today. Just stop. Let all the thoughts in your head pass. Let all the worry and anxiety pass for 5 minutes. Let it all go as if it doesn't exist. You can do it for 5 minutes. And just look around exactly where you are and find the one thing in your immediate presence that you can be grateful for. Maybe it's just having the ability to hear this podcast. Maybe it's the sun on your face. Maybe it's the breeze through your hair, the birds in the distance, the sound of your kid laughing. The bowl of cereal that you're having for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Find something. The cup of coffee. I couldn't make coffee this morning. I had to make tea because for a number of reasons. So I'm drinking a glass of Earl Grey tea. I'm grateful for this Earl Grey because it stood in for my good friend Coffee when Coffee couldn't make it. So silly little things. Embrace the silly little good things in your life, even if for just 5 minutes a day, and then share that with others. Tell them to do the same. So that's the more poignant part of the Wordslinger podcast today. I hope you're getting something great out of the show. I love each and every one of you. God bless. I'll see you all next time.
word slinger.